Welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure. Welcome to the program. Gilad Atzmon. He's in from England, where he's residing now, and he's got a most interesting story to tell in terms of the politics of the spaceship Earth on this particular season. And we're here marking the day, the Iowa caucuses. This very day when we talk, this is the day of the Iowa caucuses. So that means the official election process gets underway for the election of the United States, of the President of the United States of America. So it's an appropriate time for us to be talking about things political. Gilad, welcome so much to Conversation.
I'm very happy to be with you again.
Very good, very good. It was good we talked yesterday. So your take on things, I'm wondering, well, I think maybe the best thing for us to do, Gilad, is talk your own background, okay? Where you were born and raised, that kind of thing.
I was born in Israel.
Yeah.
Many years before I realized what Israel was really standing for, something that became a very troubling concern for me and still is.
Yeah.
I was raised in a kind of very nationalist, patriotic environment. I took it very seriously for a while.
Yeah.
I joined the Israeli army in 81, 82. There was a war.
Right.
I started the Lebanon war, actually, the first Lebanon war, and I started to realize that we were not the most moral army in the world. In fact, we redefined the notions of immorality. And did
they come all at once, or did it come?
It is a process. It is not something that once you become suspicious, you open the gate for a lot of thoughts and concerns that eventually, in some cases, lead towards a serious change.
Yeah, and it was a transformation for you that you were going through, because you had been a more or less, I don't want to say true believer, but you had just more or less believed in the legitimacy of the.
Yeah,
and you had held that.
I'm a jazz artist, you know. So
yeah, I know. Yeah,
so
by all means.
Yeah, so for me, you know, the first instant when I realized that something was wrong, you know, and I started to listen to Charlie Parker, you know, and to Miles Davis, and they were great, you know. And I thought, oh my God, you know, because they told us that everything good is Jewish. So I assumed that Miles and Bird and Coltrane and Duke, they were all kind of black Jews, and I said, if we have so many black Jews, why don't they come to Israel?
What were you? They were telling you everything Jewish was good.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
No. In Israel, in the Jewish world in general. They basically developed along the years this kind of system that is driven by serious or severe or very problematic, actually, supremacist ideology, where you tend to believe that Jews are slightly more clever, slightly more sophisticated. When you learn music, it's kind of a zigzag between the Jewish composer. You jump between Mendelssohn to Bernstein, you know, and you skip and you go to Bach and Mozart later. Through jazz, I obviously realized that this wasn't the case. I realized at a certain stage that Bird wasn't exactly a Jew; he was just a genius, you know. It was then, more or less, you know, I was 16, 17, 18.
Yeah. Oh, I see that age group. Right.
When I realized that actually maybe rather than dying in the next Jewish war. and we knew at the time it was kind of every 7 to 8 years we had a kind of a big war, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, you were talking
67,
before.
73, 80,
Yeah.
82, you know, 81 it was supposed to
81 to
81
82,
supposed to 82. So it was very clear, you know, that there would be a war, you know, and you even looked at kind of positively about the prospect of dying,
Right.
you know, because
Right,
it's a patriotic
Yeah,
society,
absolutely, yeah,
you
right.
know. And then I thought maybe dying is not a great idea. Maybe just playing in New York or in London or in Paris maybe is a better idea, you know,
Yeah.
better
But you
possibility to spend your life on.
You had come up in a family where you had assumed the legitimacy of the Israeli and Zionist enterprise.
I in
And
the
you came
early
to
stage in the
question it.
early stage I believed all of it. I
Yeah.
believed that we had the right to come back. I believed that we were the ultimate sufferers. I believe in the primacy of Jewish suffering.
Yeah.
And it's very easy.
Yeah,
It's very
right.
easy. You know, first
Yeah.
you are young.
Well, you had the Holocaust not
you know,
a couple
Holocaust
decades before. Yeah.
and it took me a while already in school. I started to ask myself, how is it possible that we have so many Holocausts?
Yeah.
And is it
Yeah.
always different people
Right.
have to take the kind of the blame? They are all anti-Semites
Right.
and we are okay.
Right.
You know that in school, you know, there will be, if there is a kid who is bullied constantly, sometime it has something to do with his conduct. You know, so
Yeah.
I realized that it is very possible that something is not totally right with Jewish culture, with Jewish identity. It may as well be possible that we were bringing disasters on ourselves. And actually, by now, I'm totally convinced that this is the case.
What was the traditional way of assuming that in the Jewish tradition? I'm Anglo-Saxon, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I got a big cross to bear with being a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But
I'm happy to swap anytime.
Anyway, what was the running narrative with the Jewish people who they had pogrom, they had this kind of thing, they had their narrative and understanding of why the universe would allow such injustice to be delivered down upon them.
But this is exactly the way they see it. It is very interesting that you ask this question because one of my mentors and persons who helped me to open my eyes was actually Israel Shachak.
Oh,
And actually, I think,
Shachak,
and I mentioned Israel Shachak because probably the best TV interview with Israel Shachak was conducted by yourself.
I love that man. He was beautiful. Yeah.
He was, and Israel Shachak actually helped me to understand that all those pogroms that happen in Ukraine and Khmelnytsky,
seemingly forever,
you know, seemingly forever, are always, you know, had something to do with Jewish culture, with Jewish behavior, with Jewish politics. Israel Shachak spoke about the fact that the Jews in Ukraine, for instance, associated themselves with the elite. They were basically bailiffs, something to do with the fact that they were an illiterate society.
Right.
And when it came to kind of a popular uprising led by Khmelnytsky, who is, by the way, a cultural hero in Ukraine, the Jews were the prime sufferers. But it has something to do with, according to Shachak, to do with the teaching of the Talmud. The teaching of the Talmud, the unique exilic culture, exilic from exile, Judaism is a unique exilic culture that teaches the Jew to bond with elite, with the ruler, sometimes to stand against the people, and so on and so on.
As they apparently had done in Soviet
and when you come
Russia.
now, the way Jews teach their history always starts at the time of the disaster. We never look at the causes that lead to the disaster.
I wonder if that's a human characteristic.
It is. It is. By the way, when I not that long ago, I spoke about it with a black activist,
Yeah.
American. He said, "What do you try to say, Gilad? Do you try to think? Are you
Yeah.
suggesting
Yeah.
that we black people
Yeah.
should also look in the mirror?"
Yeah.
And I told him, and I realized that I may going to upset him.
Right.
And listen, looking in the mirror,
Yeah.
self-reflecting, understanding your own role is not necessarily a bad thing. And when I look, for instance, at the civil rights movement, that period, that area
Yeah.
in your history,
Yeah.
I think that for me the most interesting character is Malcolm X,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
exactly what he did.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would also, I'm going to upset a lot of people, but I'm used to
Go
upset
ahead,
a lot of people.
upset away,
Yeah, yeah,
upset away.
One of
Tearing the table over. Yeah.
One, I argue, I'm obviously an opponent of Zionism and every form of Jewish politics.
okay.
Jewish left, Jewish anti-Zionism, but I'm definitely an opponent of Zionism. And yet, I argue that early Zionism is one of the most interesting phases in Jewish history, because early Zionism is the moment where Jews looked in the mirror and said, "Oh, something is not right." The anti-Semites, so-called, are actually correct.
Are you thinking back 19th century?
We are talking about the late 19th century.
Yeah.
They realized that there was something parasitic in the Jewish emancipated world. They were involved in capitalism, in banking, in money lending, and a lot of activities that were non-productive. And they said, we know how to fix it. It is because we don't have land.
Yeah, right.
Homecoming will solve all of it. So they invented home, and they tried it. And for a while, for 2-3 weeks, they really worked in the fields and as builders. And then they realized that the Palestinians were cheaper. And this was the end of the Zionist dream. What was very interesting about early Zionism for me was the idea that the diagnosis of the disease, of the problem, of the symptoms was totally correct. The course of action proved to be wrong. In fact, Israel is a non-productive place.
Non-productive.
Non-productive
How can
place.
you say that when they're being so entrepreneurially successful?
This is where we can look into. We can look into their success. Yesterday I read a new study that in the developed world, Israel poverty percentage of poverty is the highest. It's 20.9% of people living under poverty line.
Say that again, please.
That yesterday, there were a few. I came across a few new studies that revealed that the poverty in Israel is huge.
Really?
It's like 20.9%. It's very interesting.
Really?
Inequality in Israel is just one step above Mexico.
Wow.
All right?
Oh, really?
Now, this is not very surprising.
Well, do you have such a concentration of wealth and power and that sort of thing as we do in the United States?
Now, America is not much better. America is far from the bottom. For instance, in poverty, your percentage of poverty is 17%. Israel is 20.9%.
I'll be damned.
All right. Now, this is very, very interesting.
I'll be damned.
Because Israelis are still very, very happy. Now we have to ask ourselves: Israeli people, they're still kind of somehow very happy. They like it. Maybe they like the weather or whatever.
It is nice.
But they are abused constantly. Now this is not very surprising because this is very similar to the social condition in the European ghetto. In the European ghetto, there was a very clear division, or
Right.
partition
Yeah.
between the cognitive elite, the rabbi, and the Mammonites.
Mammonites.
Mammonites, the rich merchants,
Okay.
you know,
Mammonites.
and
I've not heard that
yeah,
term. Yeah.
and it's actually a biblical term. Maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't use it.
Oh, yeah.
And what they call the Ostjuden, the Jews of the East, those who were wood cutter and water drawers, people who
Peasantry?
they were not really peasant. They were just people who were living in total poverty. We cannot call them peasants because in many places they couldn't even engage in farming. But
I
they were.
I see.
All right?
Less
So,
than peasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and Israel is becoming such a place now. What is very interesting about Israel? How is it possible that Israel is these studies reveal that the Israel's economy is extremely stable, while people are totally abused. And one of the reasons, is that this is another very interesting statistic. We know it from quite a few years. That, for instance, out of the 10 Russian oligarchs 10 years ago, 7 were Jews with an Israeli passport. So Israel became a shelter for all this Russian money.
Really?
All right, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure, and now, for instance, when there is a rise of anti-Semitism in France, so a lot of money of French oligarchy, French Jews, French tycoon go to Israel into real estate. It means that Israelis cannot really even dream about buying a flat in Tel Aviv.
Really?
Yes, listen, it's their concern, but the fact that they are such an abusive society towards their own people is hardly a surprise. And actually,
I find it surprising as you talk to me because I've seen it from afar.
listen, I'm also not.
been able to see that.
I'm also not living there. I didn't visit the country for 20 years. I just, but I read the papers every day, and I monitor and I write about it because I find a Jewish identity. I find the politics. I think that it is fascinating. It is fascinating to see people who, no doubt, achieved a lot. Look at the domination of Jews in politics, in academia, in America, in finance. It is quite fascinating to watch. It's not necessarily a positive force. You know, I think that it's, in the case of America, sometimes it is a very negative force, and the same can be said about Britain, you know, pushing into, like, for instance, today I read a very good paper about neoconservatives. It is pretty much a Jewish school of thought, and look what a disaster they have managed to bring on the world, on the Syria, on Iraq, on Europe. You know, so it is very important to look into it. It is very important to talk about it. It is crucial to talk about it also for Jews, because if we keep silent, this will bring a disaster on all of us.
All of us
mean America, Europe, and so on and so.
All the Jews you're talking
and as well on the Jews, you know, because Jewish history teaches us that pogrom really is when the goyim, the Gentiles, say enough is enough. You know, pogroms, disasters, show us are always reaction to something. And I see a duty to
You-
talk about it, not just for the Jews, for everyone, including the Jews.
But you're not blaming the evil delivered down upon them, upon themselves, or are you?
This is
is-
you know, are you blaming the victim? I'm familiar with this,
Yeah,
you know,
obvious, obvious, yeah.
for sure. This is the thing, you know, I write a lot about it, and
Yeah.
it is way more complicated.
Yeah, sure.
I think that I never talk about Jews. I try instead to understand what is it in Jewish culture, in Jewish ideology, that pushes them forward. What is it that makes them so dominant in certain societies?
They're dominant intellectually in many quarters,
Definitely,
in many fields, and
definitely.
they are very accomplished.
And you came to my talk or my lecture on this topic.
Yeah.
What is it within their own society? You know, people like to talk about Jews being very clever.
Yes,
and I
indeed.
looked into it, and I'm not so sure that this is the case at all. However, I
that's
would
the perception for sure.
No, for sure.
And by me, that's the perception.
No. And when I looked into it, I realized that whether Jews are clever or not is subject to a big study. Some
Yeah.
people looked into it, believe they are. Some others believe they don't. What is very clear to me, the Jewish elite is uniquely sophisticated, and I can explain it.
Okay,
And by the
please.
way, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not original. I'm kind of quite a lot was written about it. For
Jewish elite, politically,
Jewish elite, Jewish
spiritually,
cognitive, Jewish cognitive
intellectually,
elite.
or what?
I'll explain it. For more than 1,000 years,
Yeah.
Jews had European Jews, Ashkenazi
Yeah,
Jews,
yeah, yeah.
had a very interesting exercised a very interesting procedure. They used to marry the young sage, the young rabbi, or a kind of a big scholarly, enthusiastic young person with the daughter of the leading merchant. Business.
What was
business
that
guy.
term you used for that?
The Jewish term, the
Yeah,
Hebrew, the
no,
gvil.
there was a term for the merchants. Or
The
the leader.
merchant. I mean businessman. Basically, for more than 1,000 years,
Yeah.
Jews married scholarship
Yeah.
with money.
Uh-huh.
All right,
Mm.
and they created a very small, tiny elite that was specializing in money and scholarship. Now, this explains to you where the Rothschild, for instance, came
Yeah.
from. This explains to you why
Venice, Venice banking, yeah.
This explains to you why this such a small community of Jews are so dominant in American finance, for
Yeah, right.
instance.
Yeah, that
why
is-
they are dominant in certain kind of academic studies. Now, the problem is
Many academic subjects, much intellectual contribution.
maybe
In my way of thinking,
maybe
in my experience, yeah.
we can look into it. You know, marketing. Sometime, even when they are not as clever as you may think they are much better because of the money element. They are very good in marketing some ideas that are not very sophisticated. You know,
Yeah,
for
I
instance,
can think of all kinds of things. Where
for
they-
instance,
they've
Alan
flowered, yeah.
Dershowitz.
Yeah.
I don't think that the guy is uniquely clever, but he was very definitely. Actually, I think that he's uniquely stupid. But he was definitely very good in marketing himself.
Yeah.
Chomsky.
No.
Noam Chomsky. I also don't think that Noam Chomsky is uniquely clever, but he was uniquely sophisticated in marketing those
ideas
that are actually pretty boring.
relevant. Yeah.
You know, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. They were definitely relevant. It was more interesting, definitely in the 70s and so on. You know, but even as linguistic, I've never been, you know, inspired by the idea. But it doesn't matter. You know, you can look at Bernard-Henri Lévy, who called himself Bernard-Henri Lévy, the French.
I don't know.
He's very dominant in France. In fact, he claims to be the person who managed to pull France into Libya. You know, he said, as a Jew, I liberated Libya."
France and Libya win.
You know, in the recent Ziocon interventionist war against Gaddafi and so on.
Oh, modern. Oh, I was thinking historically.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And again, a very, very lame. He's an handsome boy, very good-looking guy, but again, as a philosopher, pretty lame. And again, I think the marketing is part of this business, and I understand it. I understand it. We have to accept that they have managed. They've managed to make themselves vastly overrepresented, no doubt about that, in your Ivy League, in your academia, in your banking, in the Federal Reserve.
Well, those are some pretty important positions to hold within a society, don't you think?
And at a certain stage, but at the same time, you know, if you go to the Orthodox community in Brooklyn, they are actually pretty poor. In Israel, the Orthodox communities are 70% under the poverty line.
Okay.
The Orthodox.
I'm learning here.
It's quite incredible.
Yeah. See, I have, as a distant WASP again, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, which has his own cross to bear.
Enjoy your waspness, you know. I told you,
But I've had an admiration of the Jewish contributions intellectually and otherwise to world culture that apparently seems to be brought into some question by you, intellectually particularly. It seems to me they've contributed overwhelmingly to the
when I look
advancement of society.
When I look into it, I definitely think that they are dominant. When it comes to the question what they really contributed, I think that they contributed a lot. I think that the contribution of Jesus is enormous.
Okay.
And let's assume that Jesus was a Jew and it's all true. Jesus, all right?
Okay.
The contribution of Spinoza is very significant. Even I'm not a Marxist or Bolshevik, but I think that the contribution of Marx was significant.
Yeah.
And when I look at Jews who really contributed to humanity, I find out that all of them are self-haters.
Are
self-haters. Jews who hate themselves, you know, being Jews, you know.
I got to get that spelled out to me a little bit.
Sorry, it's my pronunciation.
No, I know. No.
Self-haters.
Yeah,
my H.
Okay.
They are self-haters. And this is very interesting, but it's not...
well, how is that manifest?
Because
I don't find that.
I tell you what.
You're telling me things here when I have to learn a lot because it doesn't jive with my experience.
By the way, some people, many people, and definitely many Jews wouldn't agree with me.
Yeah.
But I argue that the best comes out of the Jew when the Jew engages in proper self-hatred. And why?
Proper spell it out for me, brother.
And why?
Yeah.
And why? For instance, you know, Shachak was denounced as a self-hater.
Yeah. Oh.
And why? Why? Because he could really understand that there was a conflict between his understanding of humanism and universalism,
Yes.
and the Jewish tribalism that is exclusive, driven by chosenness, by supremacy, and so on and so on.
It's not just nationalism writ large, or the French this and that, the English that.
When we talk about Israel Shachak, we can look at for sure.
Yeah.
We can talk about Israel Shachak.
Is it unique to Jewish people that they have pride of their own development or their own culture or their own
No,
background?
it's definitely
something different than that, or more, or
yeah.
extreme
There isn't, especially.
chosen people.
This is the thing. This is the thing. We can look at it, and this is a very important question. A lot of people.
Uber mentioned.
Yeah,
in
for
some
sure.
way?
By the way, Ubermensch. Some people who criticize some even German nationalists at the time of the rise of National Socialism said the problem. They at the time said there is no problem with being patriotic, nationalist, and a socialist. The problem with Nazism, I don't like to use the term, the problem with National Socialism or Hitlerism started when they say National Socialists started to behave like Jews. We started to think in racial terms.
No, they said that.
We started to think and
they tried to lay that on the Jewish
not on Jews, obviously not on Jews, but on the kind of ideology that is so similar to Jewishness. This is very interesting because in the Black Notes that were published recently by Heidegger, he argues that the Jews, I don't quote him now verbatim, but what he said basically that the Jews hated Hitler because they could see that he was engaging, because he was engaging in something that they are doing for thousands of years. All right, so it is very, very interesting.
You're doing a very bad us, Adolf.
Hitler was too much of a Jew. Now this is very interesting. I'm going to get trouble now with kind of.
Go get some trouble.
Now this is a very, very interesting, approach to the topic. Now, when you look at American society, English society, Arabic society, even Muslim society, Christian society, we are dealing with multi-ethnic societies. Now, there is no doubt.
And most
the Jews are also multi-ethnic. For instance, I'm genetically pretty Jewish, and it is hardly. I believe that there is no much a kind of a biological genetic continuum between myself and a Yemenite Jew. All right, we are very different.
Okay,
Jews are not racy, not a race. They are not a race. It's
state of mind.
But Jewish politics is racist to the core.
Is all politics racist?
And the politics is certainly racist. Yeah.
Yeah, but in general, in the human society, politics tends to be I'm good, you're bad.
By the way, you're right. You're right. One of the things that we have to accept when we start to deal with politics
on this Iowa Caucus Day, we're about to elect the President of the United States.
You're right. It's actually
this is just February 1, 2016. A fateful day on planet Earth.
Yeah, it is. It is an interesting. Let's leave the Jews. Let's give them a break.
No, not at all. It's all very interesting.
No. It's actually, I think that what we see in America in the last 2-3 months,
it's really something, isn't it?
Is very, very interesting, and in a way, it may as well be a reaction to the Jewification of your society. And I'll tell you why. I mean, Jewification, not Judification. They
right.
don't invite you to the
understand.
synagogue.
I see, yeah. Right.
But we made you into a capitalistic society that is non-productive. Non-productive. You don't produce a lot. You used to produce cars. America used to produce everything and top quality. You don't produce a lot. And I think that one of the very interesting character, again, a guy who was very dominant in influencing your politics. I'm talking about Milton Friedman.
Yes, indeed. Very powerful.
Has a lot to do with it. And he didn't do it because he was conspiratorial or a bad guy. He thought that this was a good
He really thought that was the case. He believed in that.
He believed in it.
Chapter and verse.
He believed in it. Now, what happened when you were young?
Oh my God!
And I wasn't
ago.
there yet. And even when I was young, politics was pretty simple. At least in the democratic world, we were concerned with production, health, and education. So a politician would come to you and would say, listen, if you put me in office, I'll make sure that in this city you have 40,000 more jobs. And you will have healthcare, and you would have education. Maybe in America, healthcare
wasn't. Well, you still hear echoes of that.
Now, at a certain stage, when we stopped being producers.
Wait a minute, stop being produced?
When we stopped manufacturing, disappeared off the window.
Now you're talking
American, British,
America,
French,
United States.
When we stopped being engaged in production, we were reduced into consumers.
Right. Well,
and the politician, instead of looking after jobs, education, and health, they became subservient to monopolies. They were the machine that facilitated consumption. We were reduced into consumers, and the politician facilitated consumption. This was the end of politics as we knew it, and it was the beginning of a new phase in our political world. That's what I call post-political condition.
Well, that was also accompanying the incredible thing that is of the last moment, which is the whole IT thing, the whole information technology going exponential.
By the way,
moving not only beyond information technology. Look, we got these little phones you can cover the whole damn universe you can get to and so forth. But it's also going into robotics. And the whole productive process of human labor, which is part of the labor theory of value that informs so much economic thinking, is being qualitatively challenged by the fact that airplanes are going to fly themselves.
Taxis are going to drive themselves. This is
quite literally. The need to have human labor involved in the productive process. You don't have to be. The major thing for humans to do now is to consume. And to consume what can be produced by autonomic systems that are becoming part of the productive process.
You are totally right. You are totally right.
Humanity's being put on the dustbin of history in terms of production.
And I'm not convinced about that.
Well,
I'm not convinced about that. I definitely agree with you that the data industry and robotics evolved
robotics are more recent.
rapidly, and yet, there is still a need for some people to put those iPhone 6 or iPhone 7 or whatever they will come up now for Apple phone together. There are some people that are needed to move the car out of the factory, even if it's all totally produced by robots. And the issue is that we still don't do it in America. So
we still don't
produce the iPhone in America. We produce it in China. Now I don't have any issues.
Advantage of
for sure. Now this is a thing that can be changed. This is a thing that can be changed. And I'm not against Chinese making money.
No.
But I think that these issues these issues are real crucial. Now, going back to the election, what is so interesting now
Here in the United
in
States.
the United States, and by the
Oh,
way,
you have elections in Israel too.
I'm not. I
You
don't know
got
about.
Mr.
I don't know
Netanyahu.
about Israel, but I live in Britain.
Yeah,
And
in Britain,
in Britain, we saw the rise of Jeremy Corbyn, who was put into the race in the Labour Party as basically as a tool, you know, to present kind of a left, you know, that to prove somehow that the Labour is still connected with his roots. And within weeks, he became the most popular politician in Britain. Now, you know, obviously I have a lot of sympathy to the guy, but I'm not so sure that he can really provide yet. It doesn't prove yet that he can do anything good for the country or for left in general. But his popularity reveals that people are really tired of the system.
Isn't that the Bernie Sanders of
Britain?
This
is exactly the same case.
And that's coming out.
This is exactly the case of Bernie Sanders. Whether Bernie Sanders
That's a young fellow in Britain? I don't know him.
Jeremy Corbyn is actually not young at all. He has been a backbencher for 35 years, you know.
Oh, good. We need some of those old backbenchers with a little, some years behind him, like Bernie. How old is he? He's got to be 70 years.
He's very similar to Bernie. Now,
maybe the old sons of guns have to come out and start taking
I'm
over.
not so sure. I don't know Bernie Sanders personally. I'm not so sure that he can save Britain. I'm not saying that he's going to be a good president.
You're talking Corbyn.
You know. But no. But what is clear? The popularity of Bernie Sanders. This is I'm talking about vast popularity, about people who follow a new person that is what you may call a backbencher.
And question things root and branch. That are accepted by the established order. That's something that seems to be blowing in the wind now.
And the same can said about Mr. Trump.
Yes, indeed.
You know, it is the exact, again, a person who is not afraid to say what he thinks. This is, you know, after 30, 40 years of political correctness.
People are fed up with the normal.
For sure. After 30, 40 years of political correctness. What is political correctness?
Right.
Who imposed political correctness? Political correctness is a prime symptom of the Jewification of a society.
Jewification.
And I'll show you what it is. How do I define Jewish power?
Okay,
Jewish power is the power to silence criticism of Jewish power.
Is that really right?
This is what it is.
Show me an example of what are you talking about?
When Jewish power is taking place.
They had that thing in the New York Review of Books. Was it Mersheim or something?
For sure.
And that was not allowed to serve.
Exactly. The issue about Jewish power is the fact that we don't dare really touching AIPAC. We don't talk about the fact that I don't know if it's true or not that your high court is kind of overrepresented. We don't talk about these issues.
AIPAC is sacrosanct, or has been. But a lot of things that have been sacrosanct maybe are coming into focus and under criticism by a mass movement in the world that we can begin to see emerging.
And this is the issue, and this is why it is so important, not just for the American people. It is very important for the Jewish people to make sure that people actually criticize them openly, because after studying Jewish history for so many years, I came to the conclusion.
Somebody ought to start doing that.
I came
to got this guy Gilad.
This is good. I came to the conclusion that they don't have the means to restrain themselves. And this is why we see their history suffocated with terrible disasters.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Well, now, wait a minute. This thing of, I'm trying to get where we all focus on all of this. What's it mean? We're talking about the emergence of a Bernie Sanders and a Corbyn.
yeah. Now this is very interesting. This is very interesting. This is very interesting.
And we had a thing in in 2008. We had a thing we had this Iowa caucus going about now. This is the beginning of the Iowa caucus, and we had this guy coming along who was unstoppable, just absolutely unstoppable. His name was Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Middle name Hussein.
Yeah.
Barack, black.
Yeah.
Black, for crying out loud. And he won over the presidency.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying he won over the presidency, but with all the pussyfooting and so forth, they've not been able to get anything fundamentally done. It's still all the money going to the very top people, and they've not been able to make any kind of qualitative change. Even though he had all of that juice behind him, do you think there is a chance that there's going to be a qualitative transformation of the political and economic order in the time ahead, being
it is a very good
by
question.
what you're saying, and
It
by
is-
Mr.
it is a very-
Bernie Sanders.
It is a very
and maybe Mr. Trump.
you know, it is. I said it yesterday in the talk.
Yeah.
I was over the moon when Barack Obama took over. You know,
I was walking, I
and
was dancing down the street.
Some people around me, clever people, told me, "Listen, you know, don't you understand? If you manage to get that far, it's because it's not what you think." And for a while, I was very optimistic, and then I was kind of disappointed, and I even admitted it in public. And now we are kind of approaching the end of his second term, and I actually admire this man. And why I admire
I do too, as
yeah,
well.
yeah, and why I admire this man?
But
Because it's very rare in recent American politics that American president understands what he is up against while being in the office.
all right, there's
So,
something to be
for
learned
instance,
there,
I spoke up yesterday about Jimmy Carter.
The limitations of the drag of history
Yeah.
upon and the movement toward what is known in order to keep anchored to history seems to have an effect rather than the impetus to massive change that seems to be in the air.
I think that your relationship with Israel are in a different place. Your relationship with Iran.
The United States in their relationship with Israel is different.
Yeah, relationship with Iran is in a different place.
Yeah, now.
And the Middle East is in a total chaos.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Now, this is a mess that some people would say that it started in 2003. Maybe it started many years earlier, you know, with a fundamental wrong approach to the entire region.
A lot of people say it was Iraq, invading Iraq, and
you know, and
overthrowing Hussein.
I'm not so sure that American president could amend this situation. But one thing that you inherit a lot of mess.
Yeah.
One thing is very clear, you know, when he was under severe pressure to intervene in Syria by the Jewish lobby, he handled it. He handled it better than the anti-war movement. The anti-war movement wouldn't talk about the Jewish lobby pushing us into the war. And he has managed to say, listen, if the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, you want us to do this war, you come to help us in the capital.
And he got that thing through with Iran.
Yeah.
You think that's a good thing that's happened?
Yeah. Look,
it seems that way to me, too.
When you, for sure, when you look at Bibi Netanyahu coming to your Congress against the will of your president.
Yeah, what did you make of that? I mean, it seems to be absolutely absurd.
What a humiliation. What a humiliation for you as a nation.
Yeah.
And yet to deal with this kind of nonsense and to survive and still to go against it, you know, so I have a lot of respect to this man.
I got a lot of respect for him too, but it does also illustrate the feeling we had in the night he was elected at first in 2008 was a time of expecting qualitative transformation that is always seemingly having to be the vision of the possibility, the high note, the possibility that is there before us, the opportunity to get in touch with the capability rather than be restricted by the drag of history as it is something that's going to have to be faced. And that set in after that. And he was able to stay the course and keep the world economy from going into, I mentioned it to you in that talk we saw last night, Timothy Geithner wrote the book Stress Test. They had to go through all of that stuff they had to go through in order to keep the whole world from falling into, they claim, utter destructive anarchy. And that they kept the ship of the world, the ship of state is the term, afloat and moving in a traditional way. But it still seems to be there is a siren call, if that's what it is, of qualitative transformation, liberation in a way that seems to be part of the capability that's there, awaiting for us to find a means by which we can tap into the future rather than be weighed down by the anchors of history.
I met you now a few times, and you always concerned with these issues. You realize, obviously, as many of us accept, that we have the intellectual, the technological means to sustain good life in this country.
No. Qualitatively transformative, liberating capability, unique only to this generation.
But
not in political terms.
No,
but
I didn't talk. I didn't talk about.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. The issue is that when we are living in a society that is driven by consumption, and dominated by cognitive elite that operates as an oligarchy that is only concerned with its self-interests, which is, by the way, very different from WASP. You define yourself as a WASP, very different from WASP elite that dominated this country 60 or 70 years ago, 50 or 40.
They did it for 1,000 years.
No, but I'm talking about America now.
Yeah, okay.
But
it's just an extension of that.
I am not very optimistic when it comes to our ability to save ourselves within the current system.
Well,
interestingly enough, what we see now, the popularity of Trump, of Donald Trump, and the popularity of Sanders, and the popularity of Jeremy Corbyn in Britain, and the popularity of, for instance, Dieudonné in France.
Dieudonné, I don't know.
Is a comedian who involved in and the socialist government tries to destroy him. And
any good riffs coming out of the saxophone community these days?
I don't know. The popularity of these people suggests to us that there is a huge tidal wave of global frustration.
Frustration and possible and Bobby Dylan said there's something blowing in the wind back in that time. There's something blowing in the wind, and there's something in the collective capability that is unique to this time, and it crossed a major transformative moment in the evolution of affairs comprehensively that we have to get in touch with that future capability. It's a capability, not the reality.
But there is also, I agree with you, but there is also a great danger. We are living in a very dangerous time. And why?
Because the weapon systems are species lethal. We've got a point where the Trident submarines could wipe out the entire Homo sapiens species.
This is a danger that
Do you
is.
think that's true?
This is definitely true, and this is
Yeah,
a
but
danger.
that's an existential new reality and universe. On the destructive side, we have the ability, capable, latent
There is
ability
something positive
to
about it.
liberate
you
liberate the human society or annihilate.
Yeah,
We're coming to that time in this generation. It's a little hard to understand.
I think that
we're
it's
at
more.
that kind
I think that we are living with this threat for quite a while now.
and promise.
But there is another thing.
Yeah.
There is another thing that we have to bear in mind.
We got to get it in a couple minutes.
Yeah, there is another
Use
threat.
haiku.
There is another threat
Yeah.
that we have to be aware of, because we are dealing now with a lot of frustrated people
Absolutely.
and a very small cognitive elite. We are under a severe threat of our human rights, our democracy,
Right,
our ability to
right,
participate
right,
in the political
right,
game
right,
being
right,
abolished
right,
in the West,
right,
in America,
right.
in Britain, in France,
yeah.
all those countries.
Yeah.
And this
That's short
is-
of the unleashing of the
and
weapons.
this is, and I think that the threat of Trident and nuclear is actually diverting the attention from the fact that the biggest threat in America, what made America into a great place, is the First Amendment. And things like the Patriot Acts, for instance, is there to jeopardize
what?
the Patriot Act.
Yeah,
The Patriot Act
Oh,
is
yeah,
there
yeah,
to
yeah,
jeopardize your ability to express yourself, to be yourself, to have one man, one vote.
Yeah, well, that's part of the mix. That's the part. It's a hell of an interesting time to be alive. You could have been born in the 6th century.
It will be
It's
even more interesting to die.
No, but you could have been born in the 6th century. It took thousands of years to invent
You're
a
right.
cat.
You're right.
Now,
Everything happens
we're
quick.
at a time of qualitative
Yeah.
transformation.
Yeah.
And that makes it the most 10,000th generation, 200,000 years. This is the 10,000th generation. This is the defining generation in evolutionary terms, not just political terms.
Yeah,
and among other people who are helping to make that clear and the lessons to be learned is this young man now in Britain. He's called Gilad, and he plays a hell of a saxophone. And I'll tell you, he's also got an awful lot to say. We haven't got a chance to show you the book. Let's hold it up quick, though, okay?
Yeah, this is if we are talking about Jewish politics being so dominant, I think that people should understand what we are dealing with, and I think that you need a lexicon. It's basically a toilet book, and because it's a toilet book, I put a lot of pictures, big letters, anti-Semites, brutally honest people, Arab Spring, in case you don't know what it is.
Hurry up. One more.
Yeah, one more.
Quick.
One
The
more.
definitive one.
Bar mitzvah. Do you know what is bar mitzvah?
Bar mitzvah.
Bar mitzvah. Bar mitzvah is, people don't know it's important. It's the moment when the male Jew accepts that his foreskin is not going to grow back.
Well, that's the end of the program. Thank you.